Hello, I'd like to start with, I'm actually a holistic marketeer. There is a reason behind this. It will become true. It's holistic being in the sense, not the holistic industries, it's actually meaning the whole of something. So looking at the big picture. I want you to bear that in mind. What I'm actually talking today is about, I'm here to talk about how we can predict or how we can have a greater influence on how people share content online and how we can encourage people to share and collaborate. First of all, I want to start by looking at what we actually know. First of all, we know that people are interacting and sharing online, and this actually has an influence of their offline behaviour. We know that have the same emotive drivers behind it, the same incentives and motives why they're similar emotional drivers, such as humour, faith, desire, and empathy. A couple of stats, just to begin with. We've got over 200 million people Twittering, which I'm sure a lot of you are at the moment. We have 50,000 people who meet up regularly through Meetup, which is great. And we have 2 days' worth of footage is uploaded every single minute on YouTube. That's pretty impressive statistics. However, they're just statistics. They're logical reasons, but they're not telling us why people are sharing or how people are sharing or why they're sharing things on. So, with all this content creation being created, how can we actually tap into, how can brands, how can organizations, how can ideas tap into that area of interest? Well, start off with, one of those things is, one of those aspects is the fact that people are creating their own filters. And through those filters, all this noise is creating, it's drowning itself out. So people are suffering from information overload. Along with Google's funneling personal search results, and of course Facebook's recent introduction of their recent interaction filters. I don't know if you've noticed on the news feeds, they're limiting who you actually converse with. So you're missing out a whole lot of information, a whole load new of ideas. So alongside that, people are funneling their ideas, but how can we actually engage with these people? Well, through one of the classic cases is through repetition. 9 hits and you're sold. The very old advertising mantra where if you had 9 times you saw it and you engaged with that brand or you engaged with that symbol, that image that represented something, and you were taken on the journey. However, nowadays, with all the different communication channels, all the different media we have, it's more like 60 hits, 60 plus. So how, as a small entity, can you compete against these larger organizations? Okay, well, to get within this inner circle of interest, within people's actually engage with them, is to actually speak in their language. And through that, it's their cognitive communication language, and which is similar to their learning skill. And the reason for this is because it's the same way that we process this information mentally. So, for example, when we listen and we learn, we also memorize and retain this information, and then we retrieve and actually pass the information on. So, when we're being propelled all this different information and media that's thrown at us, we have to wade through so much to try and actually hear what we're interested in, what our family and friends are saying, what pictures we actually want to look at, instead of diving into so many different aspects and having to sift the advertising apart. We have to actually mentally work harder, and through that, we just switch off. So, but if we receive this information in our primary communication style, it's easier for us then to reply and to interact, which then means it's greater for us to reply in greater speed, with confidence in what we're actually saying, and with greater accuracy in the original message. So which means, of course, when we know that, we're going to pass this message on. The reason for this is because when it appeals to our natural communication state, it helps us retain the information better, which is then easier to retrieve from our memory, which means it's then closer to the original message. The reason that video is such a success is because it speaks to so many different aspects of communication styles. You've got your visual, auditory, even kinesthetic. For example, when you watch an action, or for example, if you're learning a dance move from YouTube, for example, you probably get up and use that muscle memory to reenact what you're visualizing. One of the main principles of, I missed, of course, a classic case of Facebook. Facebook is a fantastic primary example of why these different communications can be such a success. they've enabled all the different capabilities you're able to do on Facebook means that people can communicate in the way that really, in the way this comes with such ease to themselves in real time. So you can put up an image, people can like, people can comment, you can put up an audio boo, you can connect through many different areas. Okay, one way to make this easier, so between retaining the information and then retrieving the message, is by creating a narrative format. Now, I know that we talked about, I think, storytelling yesterday, which is really interesting. If you create that memorable message, people will start to engage in it, and they will start to follow this. Another way is doing this through games, so gamification. Another way is through transmedia. And transmedia is particularly beneficial for this, is because it's built within a narrative framework. It's a tricky one to talk about, but it's built within a narrative framework that encourages collaboration and sharing across many different platforms. Now that can be, this is both on and offline. So that can be an individual's perspective to word of mouth, to turning up to an event, to receiving a text, to then connecting through to a YouTube link, which then connects through to a live streaming blog. There's many different aspects. You create the message between. So, to summarize, what does this actually mean in the long run? This means, generally, you can reach a bigger audience. We know how difficult it is to reach specific audiences, and you have to talk on so many different platforms. Why does this work to this bigger audience? Well, it crosses cultural boundaries, it crosses age divisions and different life stages, and it also crosses intellectual abilities, because it's not about your educational background. It's actually about your intellectual senses. It also offers greater opportunities for people with disabilities, and it breaks down walls between personality types. But that's a whole other talk. So, how can we have greater control on how we share and spread or see this information across different media? Well, a classic one is make sure the technology is in place. I know it seems simple, but so many people forget that you have to feed people's curiosity. You have to make sure that link works. You have to make sure that information is there to connect from your Twitter handle to your email address to something as simple to a QR code. Make sure both on and offline works, because audiences don't separate the two when we're experiencing it. Another one is obviously use a cross range of media. And that utilizes both on and offline. I can't stress that enough. These things aren't separate anymore. And the last one, of course, is to create a narrative framework that unites all the different media together and creates a seamless brand image or experience, because the consumer, user, or participant has one relationship with that entity, that brand, that theory, that organization. But by creating a united front from all the different media and aspects, it means whichever angle they come in, it works. Okay. I've only just touched on a couple of points here. There's quite a few, but I would be really happy to discuss this a bit later, or I think I've still got some time. I'm right at the end. I've got 55 seconds if anyone's got any questions. No? All right, well, thank you very much for listening.